Greetings, gardeners. Well, today I'm going to pick on one of the more popular subjects that I do occasionally, nursery production. I'm a little under the weather at the moment, so if I sound, a little off, the green guy sounds strange. Yeah, if there's anybody out there who just simply doesn't have enough pain and suffering in their lives, I highly recommend that you go out and get yourself a dose of Johnson & Johnson, and then a few months later, turn around and top it off with a Moderna booster. Yeah, I'm telling you, that'll do it to you. I feel like I got run over by a truck. It was Monday that I got the shot over at the pharmacy, and today's Wednesday, and I'm still feeling it. My arm's sore. All right. That's so typical with any kind of a vaccination, tetanus or whatever it might be, flu shots, sore arm, yeah, sure. Nothing special. I had to take yesterday off from lifting weights for the first time all year because of the shoulder. I went back today. I'm okay now. But, yeah, it's the headache. Mostly the headache. Yeah, I took a couple Tylenol. Pushes it down a little bit, but it doesn't make it go away. Yeah, it's the headache. And then I felt like I had half a case of flu. Feel a little better today, but I still don't feel right. So if you need more suffering in your life, I highly recommend boosting your J&J with a Moderna shot. It was my son, who is a pharmacy manager, is the one who made this recommendation. When I said, you're into this stuff, you guys give shots all the time. What do you think? He says, oh, yeah, man, the Moderna, he says, and since you had the J&J, that's a different type of protection. Anyway, so there's that little bit of trivia. And I don't want to hear nothing about you vaccination people. Okay, That's your problem. It has nothing to do with this discussion. So today's topic is actually about running nursery production. I'm very kind of specific on the idea of home nursery, that as a cottage industry, people who live on a property and have enough room to be able to propagate plant material for sale, and so that you can put up a home nursery, or the sky's the limit from there. My background with nursery is long. I started in my 20s, and I continued somewhere in, I guess around 40. I gave up most other things I was doing for a living, including playing rock and roll, and moved on to full-time nursery operation, nursery production. That transition for me in life has been wonderful. It is. I would recommend it to anybody. There's very few things that I've done in this planet that I would say, oh yeah, go ahead and do that too. But making the transition from either being a rock and roll musician or being a regular wage slave working on farm implements and tractors and stuff, or as a carpenter, I highly recommend nursery operation. There are all sorts of advantages to it. Number one, I got into it in the first place because I wanted to do no harm. I looked around the world, and I saw people who work for bomb site manufacturers, and people who pump oil and whatever, and I didn't like a lot of what I saw. I really didn't want to participate in those things because I didn't see them as being good. They weren't good for me. I didn't approve of them, and so plants became a very reasonable thing for me to do because, well, to begin with, plants are part of nature, and they're so important. Without plants, there's no oxygen, no human life, no other life other than bacteria or something. Yeah, they're very, very, very important to this world. They predate us, and so on, being here. They prepared the earth for us to come and whatever. So there's no harm, in my opinion, in general. I mean, you can make harm out of anything, I guess, but in general, propagating orange trees, propagating apple trees, growing roses, all this stuff. I don't see harm in most of this at all. Generally, if it's handled right, it's a very good thing that you can do for yourself, for everybody around you, and for the planet. And so that is the main reason that I headed that direction. That's probably the reason I played music for years, because I saw that it really did no harm for the most part, except to me. It wears you thin, man. Yeah, nursery is a lot better for my health. I get up every day and I'm right here on the property. Or when I ran Nursery for Partners in California, I had it was a 14-minute commute, I guess, down the freeway to get to the business. And had my own private parking place, had my own desk. It was nice. It was good, As far as I'm concerned, home nurseries, even better. Right here on the property, on the site. When I was in my active working career portion of my life, where what I did for a living was really important, or I'd have failed, I was a bit different about this. But when I decided to retire, but continue working as a nurseryman, I changed the rules in the game, and what I decided was that you have to come to me. I don't go to you. It was that simple. And it's worked out really well. The seed sales website, I only have to go as far away as the post office to drop that stuff off. It's a mile away. Otherwise, everybody comes here to the farm to buy things. And, it's a trip in itself. It's a journey to come to the Green Garden Guy's farm, hang out, talk to me, walk around, look at the crops, taste something. It's an event, I guess. And so people tend to like it. Most people who've come over here in the past shopping are quite happy. I was doing really well with this before COVID set in. Did pretty well early on until the Delta variant hit the island. And once that happened and the governor told the tourists, stay away, and everybody really hunkered down, and the business has really slowed down a lot. The governor got back on the TV the other day and said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to tell you guys to go away. I know we need tourists. Yeah, so some people are starting to come back again, and my business is picking up a little bit. Originally, when COVID first set in, people found they're trapped at home. What are we going to do? Man, I was selling seeds. I'm selling plants. Yeah, because people said, I'm going to sit around the house. Heck with it. I'm going to grow some food, garden, do something. So it was real good early on. Lately it hasn't been so great. And in more divulging of personal things, I have many different ways that I draw an income as a person. I usually believe in diversification no matter what you're doing. Okay, and when it comes to economy, absolutely, diversified economy. So, but for the most part, seed sales off my website and plant sales from the nursery here, that covers the bill. My daily expenses around here, whether it be trip to the grocery store, new pair of overalls, that's where it comes from. I don't ordinarily need to tap my investments in the market for those things. I save them for large expenditures like automobiles. When we converted the house to solar, that's when I start to tap money like that. We managed to make almost all of the income that we need for our day-to-day expenses and living here by selling plants, selling pineapples, selling pineapple slips, selling seeds from the earth. It all comes from the earth. And so when we set up the property here, I needed enough space. Now, you don't need a lot of space in order to run a nursery. That's not necessary. A nursery is the most compact form of agriculture I can think of, because you're growing smaller plants that will eventually become big. So everything's condensed on tables. So you don't need a lot of real estate. It's probably helpful if you have at least a half an acre. So I knew a guy in California doing water plants, and did gross of 1.5 mil every year on an acre and a half. Yeah, this can be done. My experience with nurseries has been both wholesale and retail. As a retailer in California for many years, dealing straight with the public, I used to buy from the wholesalers. And so I'm quite familiar with some of the bigger nursery purveyors like Monrovia. We used to go to dinner with the guys, and we'd tour their nurseries up down Southern California, Oregon, and so on. And Heinz, Matsuda's, Monterey Bay Nursery, these are all wholesalers, and I'm familiar with their operations too, because I've been there, I've seen what they do and how they do it. And Monrovia, for instance, is a great example. When these guys site a nursery, now part of their business, they believe in using a certain amount of native soil in their soil mixes. That's typical of Monrovia. Not everybody does that, but they do. They have a bunch of guys in white lab coats, who figure out how much native soil, how much this and that, to get a perfect mix. I mean, it's science. So when they site a nursery, one of the things they always look for is an excellent deposit of sandy loam on the nursery site that can be excavated for use for soil. And so that's first thing. Second thing is then they begin planting all the mother stock on all the divisions between the fields. Their nurseries are usually gridded with all these larger plants that they use to get cuttings, seeds, and pieces for the propagation that they do in the nursery. And I took that same idea here, and when we set up the house here in Hawaii, we planted food forest around here. I have all sorts of crops. I also have all sorts of ornamentals and curious plants, various types. Any plant of interest, value, blah, 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 is important to me, And so we bring them all in here. I've got quite a collection. I am not a plant collector. Some people do this because they're just passionate about having every plant. That's not me. I'm interested in the ones that are, really good to eat or really beautiful, whatever, have excellent qualities. Beyond the ordinary, I'm into stuff that does really well in this environment. That's very important to me, is that it works here. And so the mother plants that are in my fields, they've been tough tested here in Hawaii. I usually don't sell too many things that I haven't already been able to produce right back here behind me. And so we planted out the whole place like Monrovia did with the mothers. Now, the main difference is that most of my mother plants are then also used to feed us, because a lot of it's food, and then excess produce that comes from the mother plants, that is an item that we will sell off the farm. The pineapples, though, are the only actual crop that we produce as a fruit here, specifically for that idea of selling pineapples, wet or dry. Of course, I do sell the slips, the tops, and all that, too. So there isn't a single piece of a pineapple plant that isn't worth something. But anyway, other than just to feed us and then to sell the overflow, the main reason all this stuff is here is to continue to support the nursery and the seed business. When there aren't any crops in the trees, I'm out of stock on seeds. That's all there is to it, because a lot of tropical seed has to be wet, fresh, and green. You can't dry it and store it, And so, like cacao, for instance, it has to be wet. It still has to have the mucilage on the outside of the seed, even if you're going to try to grow it. So, with this seasonal harvesting and what I have will disappear. I don't bother to go up the mountain or down the mountain looking for some other guy who might have that seed at that same time. I just simply go out of stock. It's predominantly reason I do things this way is because I'm retired and don't buck the headwind at all. When it looks like it's going to be a little bit too much trouble to bother with it, forget it for a while. But that's my approach. I know as a businessman who have run, regular commercial nurseries in the past for other partners, I know that I could do so much more. I could set up advertising programs, other than just talking on YouTube. There's a whole lot of things that I could do here that would definitely increase my volume. But I don't need to increase my volume. For some reason I was not able to buy groceries. Maybe I'd have to worry about increasing my volume, but that hasn't happened. And so I like it. It's a comfort level. Yeah, it hasn't gone beyond, what's still kind of enjoyable for me. Yeah, when it stops being enjoyable and profitable, I got to wonder why I'm doing it. So there are so many different kinds of nurseries. As I said, they're an excellent way to make a living. It doesn't really matter which type you decide to go into, but you have nurseries, that are they're very specific. They'll do water plants, for instance. We have nurseries that do fruit trees. Nurseries that do only roses. Jackson and Perkins, is predominantly rose plants, and so on. So you have general purpose nurseries, full service, like the retails that I used to run in the Bay Area. We sold everything, from sod grass to clover seed to tomato seeds to Japanese maples and camellias and whatever. We had it all. Bottles of chemicals, bags of stuff. One type of nursery that I have engaged in to some extent, and that's the idea of plug growing. Some nurseries do nothing else except produce small plugs for other people in other nurseries to grow out as large plants for the consumer. Poinsettias are done that way. You have a few breeders down in California that do almost all the poinsettia breeding, and there's got guys that grow these things in little foam cubes, and they have a little shoot baby poinsettia plant with some roots in it, and they ship those to other people who are going to put them in 4-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch pots, 12-inch pots, and grow them up for the holidays. Most perennials, a lot of them are done that way. You'll have perennial growers that produce plugs, especially on the latest new hot stuff. Something that was just seen in Sunset Magazine. There'll be some guy that does plugs. Everybody buys the plugs in. I've done this work myself. For instance, my friend Joe Hewitt. Joe's farm over there, which is a massive fruit tree thing. He's got 60 acres of them now, I think. For Joe, I grew the plugs. Joe brought in seeds and cuttings. For me, I took that. I produced it up to 1-gallon pots, decent-sized plants. Joe took them off, potted them into larger containers on his nursery, and then eventually moved the plants out into the fields on his farm. And so I do a certain amount of that sort of growing. Now, in my case, I ordinarily will contract ahead that somebody will contact me. They need something. I'll tell them, okay, and we'll set up an agreement for how many I'm going to grow, what it's going to cost them, whether there's a deposit or not. It all depends. And I'll grow the crop out. On the other hand, like I say, with poinsettias, now here, everybody wants poinsettias for Christmas, right? And there are numerous greenhouses across the U.S. where guys will grow poinsettia plants for the holidays. And so all of those guys go to the plug growers. The plug growers don't necessarily go to them. These guys come to the plug growers to get the stuff. There's a lot of different ways to approach this stuff. Like I say, specialties, niche is always really important when it comes to nursery, especially small nursery, because competing with the big guys on their territory is very difficult. It's a lot easier to find space that's not covered by the big guys very well or at all, and to take that space in, even if it's a limited market and it's not really that big, but nobody else is there, hey, it's all yours. I've been there before with certain types of plants, things I did. I was the only guy in town, the only guy around. I remember being the only guy in Seed Savers Exchange, for instance, that had this, that, and the other thing, listed very often. That's been my situation, and I like that place. That's a great place to be when you're in the nursery, because anybody who needs that thing or wants that thing, whew, you're there. That's it. This camera, for instance, now is one of the cheapest advertising campaigns I could think of for a nursery. It doesn't cost you anything to get onto YouTube or to post videos into Facebook or various places on social media. A lot of people watch the stuff. Hey, they see it. They know you're there. They know you got it. They're going to come looking for it if you talk about it. A portion of why I sit in front of this camera over here is promote what I do. Originally, I was really to promote. That was the main reason I got into this. These days, I don't really need to promote so much anymore. So sometimes I just sit around and and just talk about stuff on my head, because it's not as important that I promote a business any longer. On the other hand, I'm sure I could get out here and completely destroy my business too with this camera, so you gotta watch what you do. Right here you see 3 of the tables. This nursery is a total of 6 tables. I have 1 in the shade under the lime, 2 in the shade up the hill here under shade cloth, and then I've got 3 tables out here in full sun. I pretty much divide the nursery here in the backyard by price point. Everything in front of you is the lowest price point. Everything in the rear is the highest price point. Big plants in the back, little ones in the front. I find it very convenient. The house is right over here behind me. The potting shed is right over there. The mother plants are right back here. There's Mamaki, here's Jeremiah, and so on. There's a lime tree I get my lime cuttings from on, and so forth. And so we are surrounded by the plants that we use to propagate here. So it's as convenient as you can imagine. You got to walk 200 feet maybe to acquire enough cuttings for something or another. So even though we're here in Hawaii where it rains a lot, I have hose bibs at every table to make it easy for me to keep this stuff watered so it doesn't die. The tables are up on concrete block. They have chain link fence pipe, pointer post pipes underneath supporting the tabletops. And so it's structurally sound, clean, easy to maintain. There you can get a look at the tables. That's just the welded fence panels, galvanized, and it's got pipes on top of it sitting on concrete blocks. If you're planning to export from this island, you're going to want to have them at least 18 inches off the ground. You want to use soilless medias too to do that. I am just about 18 inches here. I don't do very much export anyway, but everything is soilless. Here's over here. This is all Ellen's orchid stuff. You'll see here, if you look up, we got shade cloth over the top. Keeps the orchids from getting burned in the sun. Running a nursery is probably a lousy way to get rich. Yeah, it's a good way to run a business, though, and to make a living. It's pretty reliable as far as that goes. There's not a lot of, I get seasonal fluctuations, but of course I live in Hawaii where the seasonal fluctuation is pretty minor anyway, so I don't see a lot of change there. But once you adapt to the peaks and valleys of the weather wherever you're living with the nursery, you spend one time of the year doing your grafting and your propagation, the other time of the year on the sales floor moving the stuff out. You fit it all together. That's one reason that a lot of people do poinsettias, because if they aren't selling roses because there's snow on the ground, then they maybe have poinsettias in the greenhouse. It keeps gets them through. That's why a lot of nursery operators sell Christmas trees. I always hated selling Christmas trees. Oh, that was the worst. But we did it, because it got us through. I know I talked to my boss at the time. I said, George, why in the heck do we sell these things? I said, they're really not good for the planet. It's a waste, And George's response, of course, was, what else would we do? This time of year, even in California, what else will we be doing? So it kept the door open. Yeah. Anyway, so it's an okay way to make a living. Most of us don't have to look over our shoulder when we're nursery people. Very seldom, other than a few rabid gardeners that kill everything they get in their hands. You don't usually run into too many problems in this business. Most people are happy with it. They like plants. If you're a good salesman, you grow good plants, they generally like you. Honestly, I could tell you for sure, plants have made me more likable than playing blues guitar ever did. Yeah. Yeah, I'm a good blues guitarist, personally, although maybe I'm the wrong color for that business. But, I get a lot more respect out of the world as a guy who raises plants. So, I do no harm with it for the most part, as long as you stay away from working with plant material that might be dangerous in the environment. I just did a survey with the university over here. There's a lady who does the program on invasive species. They're trying to make sure here the nurseries aren't propagating plants that would be invasive in Hawaii. And I agree with them. Yeah, I get Australian tree ferns show up underneath my trees over here all the time. Australia is a long ways away. Hawaii has its own hapu'u. We have several different, at least 3 forms of tree fern here. We don't need Australia's, plus Australia's makes you itch like fiberglass. Whoa, nasty plant. And it's spreading around the island. There's a lot of things that got here that spread. So many things that get here that are well adapted in this benign environment will run amok and create terrible problems. So as a nurseryman, I think you have a certain amount of care, that you have to deal with. You don't want to start bringing in plants that are going to cause problems. And then no matter where you're located, there is actually a niche for this. I mean, you could be in the Matanuska Valley of Alaska, and believe me, they probably have a use for spruce tree seedlings, other conifers, the various trees that they use for forestry, lumber products up in that area. And there are people in Alaska that grow gardens. I've been up there planting with my friends before, in Homer. Grew quite a bit of potatoes and cabbages and things like this, in Alaska. And so even there, but I can't think of any place I have ever been in the United States that really is better for nursery production than the eastern side of the Big Island. It really doesn't get any better. The atmospheric humidity here is relatively high. The temperatures never go very low. 50 degrees is usually the coldest. They never go very high. 85 is about the hottest. Generally speaking, we don't have droughts like the one we're experiencing today. 8 days with no rain. There we go. 8 days. No rain. That's pretty special. The rest of you can laugh at that. Sure, guys in Arizona and California, 8 days, what a jerk. But it's a very well suited place. Nursery is in Puna, I would say, probably the largest farming operation we have. A tremendous amount of orchid growers here. Up the street, Akasuka. Down the street over here, I got Ben. He's a hybridizer and a breeder. We have most of the house plants that you see at your Home Depot in Cincinnati. If you look in the pots, take a look at the houseplant pots one of these days. You'll pick up pieces of cinder, lava cinder. folks used to ask me, how do I get this stuff? They grow all the houseplants in it. Well, I'd have to tell them, look, it's not that easy to get, and it's really not that good of a growing media. The only reason we use it here is because it's really abundant. The whole island's made out of lava. And so, it's a thing. We can grow in it. And on our conditions, where you're getting 120 inches of rain a year, it don't matter if you got the Dracaena rooted in cinders or peat moss, there's enough moisture for it to grow. And so if you see your houseplants and you see lava cinders in the pots, they came from my neighborhood right here, maybe just down the street. It's a big business here still. That's a container business. They load all these things in cargo containers at the heliport. They ship them over to the mainland, unload them in California, and the nursery operators will then put them in their greenhouses, quarantine them, and usually bring them up to standards to the local environment. You have to acclimate plants that come from here. If you take a plant from the Hawaiian Islands and move it directly to Dayton, Ohio, it's a pretty good chance it's going to fall apart on you before it takes, because conditions for growing here are so gentle and so easy. Our plants are soft, they grow really fast. It's a very profitable place to do this. Your only problem is transportation. We're a long ways from anywhere else. But that hasn't stopped other folks. Well, they do it all the time. My plan mostly is sell it here. Because there's a total demand here too. Any place you live where there's a lot of development, when you start to see people moving in, building houses and so on, that's a great place for a nursery. Because people need plants for those buildings, for those houses. And we're seeing building here again. It's happening again. The low interest rates, and then I guess the COVID maybe drove people out of where they were at and said, forget it, we're going to Hawaii, we're going to live in paradise. Well, trust me, we got mosquitoes and rats here too. But, I see a lot of it. And so there's building going on. And because of that, this is an excellent local market. So many people want to plant food forests. And in fact, I don't even have enough fruit trees to keep half these folks happy, because I'm also growing, hibiscus and vegetable plants and herbs and things that a lot of these folks are just not that interested in, because they're not at that level yet. They're bulldozed a lot, and they want to plant some trees and get things established that way, and then move from there through the guilds. And so, if you're living here, you've been here for years, dropping in on me and picking up some lemongrass, picking up a Hawaiian chili pepper or some basil is a normal thing. Yeah, it's a normal trip. But if you're new here, you just bought a couple of acres in, Paradise Park or someplace, you're probably looking at planting trees initially. Maybe palms, maybe natives, usually fruit trees. But there's a tremendous market right here in this area for what we can produce, especially because what we can grow here, you can't grow where you're at usually. Maybe in Puerto Rico, maybe St. Thomas, Australia, maybe, but not in most places. And so if we want it here and we need it here, we have to produce it here because nobody else has got it. A lot of things that thrive. I mean, for instance, taro, man. This is like, taro land. You're not going to find much taro available in California, not like you do here. So, well, I think my headache's starting to come back from that COVID shot, and I'm going to cut it here and move on. I hope I was able to leave you with some thoughts and some information that would be stimulating. I definitely encourage people to involve themselves in this business. It's a good one. It really is. You'll never get rich. Well, not likely, but you'll make a living if you do it right. Okay, y'all, hang loose. Later.